What's up, people? Here are the 3 worst mistakes to avoid if you want to maximize biceps growth when training them. Now, lastly, I talked broadly about the 3 worst mistakes when training arms, focusing more at the workout programming level. However, today, we're going to go more granular and talk about the day-to-day things that so many people get wrong when training your biceps that is likely hindering your gains. So by the end of this video, not only are you going to be armed with the knowledge to do bicep exercise correctly, but train your biceps in a way to build muscle as efficiently as possible. So let's get into it. First mistake when training biceps is cheating the range of motion at the bottom of a curl. Usually by 1, swinging your hips like this. This usually happens with more like free weight exercises or when you're standing. And the reason is, even though you might be extending your arms all the way, if you're using your hips to use momentum on the movement, pretty much the bottom range of motion is driven by that hip extension rather than your actual bicep curls flexing. And the second way to cheat at the bottom of the range of motion is completely avoiding it, which is arguably even worse than the first one. Now, people usually do this mistake on a preacher curl where they're scared to go all the way down thinking that they're gonna tear their bicep, when the reality is, if you're using a weight that is manageable, you're not ego lifting, you're in control of the weight even on the eccentric portion on the way down here, you can safely go all the way down on a preacher curl and not run into issues with bicep tears. The name of the game here is not ego lifting.
And to show you I practice what I preach and anecdotally prove at least that you can go all the way down on a preacher curl safely, all the while using pretty heavy weight if you're in control of the movement. Here's me doing pretty much a full set of unilateral preacher curls with the dumbbell, pretty much all the way to failure. Notice how I'm firmly planted into the seat and I'm using my offhand to actually pull myself further into the seat, thus creating even more stability. And here's where that stability really starts to matter in these last few reps. Notice on this last rep how I resist the urge to lean back and I still control the eccentric super slow on the way down. Here it comes up, and then watch me bring it back down slowly for that last eccentric.
The reason why it's so important to go down all the way on a preacher curl is the hardest portion of the preacher curl is going to be more in this bottom lengthened part of the range of motion, meaning it's going to be hard in the beginning and then it gets easier as the weight comes up. So if you're avoiding that hard part, then you're pretty much missing out on the most important part of the preacher curl, being that lengthened position. Now, another factor to consider is that the biceps have the best leverage to do elbow flexion from around 0 to like 80 degrees, so this whole bottom half. Thus, if you're avoiding this bottom range of motion at all, once again, you're missing on the opportunity to train the biceps pretty much in the best point in time if we're talking about the range of motion. This is literally the same as doing a barbell bench press and not going down all the way, getting a good stretch on your chest. You're just not gonna get the most out of the movement from a hypertrophy standpoint. Another factor to consider is that there is a growing body of evidence suggesting that training muscles at longer lengths, so when the muscle is stretched or having the resistance profile make it so that the hardest part is in the bottom, such as, like I mentioned, a preacher curl like this has been linked to better hypertrophy outcome. This applies for most other muscle groups. You generally want to be able to get the muscle stretched. It's generally a good thing for hypertrophy. Now, I'm here on the preacher curl because another way you can avoid the range of motions just by not setting it up properly. Such as with this machine preacher curl, if you have the seat too high, sometimes this bottom area is gonna still leave your arm bent. So I always recommend lowering the seat and aiming to be at a seat height where the preacher curl is nestled under your armpit firmly here. And as you see here, my arm's far more straight than it was before.
Real quick, they say the smartest way to learn is to learn from others. Now, if you're looking for more guidance on getting to your fitness goals and taking all the guesswork out of how to actually get your dream physique, definitely apply to my 1-on-1 fitness coaching program where I do pretty much just that, provide you a custom workout program, give you guidance on what to eat and how much of it to eat, and pretty much answer any questions you might have. So if you're interested, apply in the link description.
The second mistake is thinking that all compound pulling exercises will reliably grow your biceps. We all know that one person that says, oh, I only do compound movements, and I get some bicep actions with lat pull downs and barbell rows anyways. While technically, yes, your biceps are gonna be active to some degree on most pulling exercises, unless you're actively taking a supinated grip when you're doing a pull down or when you're doing a barbell row, you're probably better off doing some isolation work in the form of a bicep curl. Remember, when you're doing an exercise that biases one muscle group, in the case of a lat pull down, let's say the lower lats, you're by proxy, you're unbiasing another muscle group that's involved, in this case, the biceps. Thus, in order to maximize biceps growth, it makes sense that you should be doing exercises that actually focuses on biasing the biceps, which is a bicep curl. So you compound movement centrists, maximalists, listen up, this tip is really for you. Now I get it, sometimes there's constraints. If you're only limited to using your body weight, opting for a supinated grip as opposed to a pronated grip when you're doing your pull-ups, thus a chin up, is gonna be better for your biceps. Now, even if you're strapped for time, what you can do is superset some bicep isolation work in between your non-pulling exercise. For example, you can do an incline dumbbell bench press superset into a incline dumbbell curl. This is known as an antagonistic superset. And this seemingly weird combo actually works well because if you think about the muscles involved in a bench press, your chest, front delts, and triceps, none of those muscles are involved in the bicep curl, so it's not going to be fatiguing the bicep curls if you do a set of bicep curls right after. Now, the last mistake you can be making is going too heavy on your bicep curls. Now, real quick, before you're like, okay, that's a cop-out, obviously it's bad if you're going too heavy. Thing is, you might not even be knowing you're going too heavy because you ever do a set of bicep curls and then afterwards you're like, okay, I think I reached failure, I can't do any more curls, but I didn't really feel it in my biceps. Well, that's because two things usually happens where you're going too heavy. Let me get some lighter dumbbells. And the first mistake that happens is generally your shoulders tend to shift forward like this. This is known as shoulder flexion, and what ends up happening is your front delts get more involved, thus by proxy, reducing the load that the biceps is actually working on. And in the worst case, this can actually lead to shoulder pain, and this actually happened to me when I was doing incline dumbbell curls way too heavy. And this can pretty much happen with any bicep exercise, but it's usually most prominent on the incline dumbbell curl and a standing bicep curl, generally free weight like this. Now, the solution to this issue is always focusing on keeping your upper arms glued to the side of your body when you're doing a bicep curls. Some people even retract their scapula and engage their lats as if they're about to bench press in order to keep this neutral shoulder position as they approach failure on a bicep curl. Something that can also help is using this preacher curl rest as kind of like a back brace. And if you do this, all you really have to think about as you approach failure on a bicep curl is, as long as my triceps remain in contact with this preacher curl, I should be good. However, this doesn't fix another issue, which is the second issue that usually happens when you go too heavy, and that is you curling your wrist as opposed to keeping a neutral wrist. Now, this shifts focus away from the biceps and more the forearms. And in extreme cases can even cause some wrist pain. So, of course, the solution to this is keeping a neutral wrist, but also I think something that helps is at the top, you can even have your wrist go into a little bit of extension. Now, don't go overboard, like you shouldn't be like trying to freaking flex your wrist in this extended position or anything. A little bit of wrist extension as so isn't really gonna harm. It's actually gonna help you avoid curling your wrist, which you don't want. I guess the TLDR for this last point is the biceps aren't a big muscle group, so don't be discouraged if you can't add like 5 pounds every single session when you train biceps. Instead, go a little bit lighter, work in a higher rep range, let's say the 8 to 12 rep range, and as long as you're going within 2 reps shy of failure, consider that an adequate set. Okay, now you guys know the 3 worst mistakes when training biceps that you should avoid at all costs if you're trying to maximize biceps growth. If you want to support my page, don't forget to use code PATH at ABLE to get 10% off, get some ABLE gear, or code PATH at MyProtein for 40% off if you need some subs. Otherwise, just leave a like, that's free. Easiest way to help me out. Don't forget to subscribe to level up your physique. See you on the next one. Peace.